Hey y'all, my name's Glenn Wills. I do a little project called Forgotten Alabama. I've driven the entire state of Alabama, shooting and documenting Alabama's forgotten structures. I mean, the things we built, we used, and we eventually left behind. And because, as a result of that, I now have a Facebook page, which I will give you an address on that later, but I also have done 3 books. But I was supposed to be at the library sometime this summer, but well, things have changed. So I'm going to take y'all on a little brief tour of Alabama, and y'all can see some of the things I've seen. And if you have any questions, you can always ask the questions, and I will try to answer them, even if you just watch this on a tape delay. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right, as I just mentioned, I'm going to take you on a quick little tour throughout the state of Alabama, show you some of the things I've seen. I'm going to start off very, very close to home, and I'm sure a lot of y'all will recognize it. I'm sure and for all I know, you probably driven by it 100 times and never even knew it was there. This is an old auto repair shop on South Oak Street. In fact, it's just off to the left there is that little short bridge that kind of bows over, and you kind of go up and over the bridge there. I didn't particularly care for the building. It's not very interesting, but I really like those cool doors there in the middle, those trifold doors. These doors are so old, they predated roll-up doors. Those doors are probably 100 years old. Now, the morning I was there, this would have been February back in 2014, probably about 7 o'clock in the morning, not a cloud in the sky. The sun is just blazing. When I took this shot, I absolutely hated it. What am I going to do with this? It's awful. I mean, the building's not very attractive as it is. And you see, here's the thing. All these places are special to somebody. I want to capture them in an aesthetically pleasing way. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? Then I happen to notice a shadow there from the street light, and you see the shadows going through the window, what used to be a window. So I thought, I'm here, I'm going to walk around to the back and, through the alley and see if I can come up with something that was maybe usable. And as it turns out, I came up with something that I was very, very happy with. In fact, I've probably taken 45,000 photographs by now, and this is still one of my top 10 favorites. Up in northeast Alabama in Cherokee County, this is a cotton wagon outside the old Jordan Gin. As y'all know, Alabama was a cotton state. In 1849, Alabama was producing around 23% of the nation's cotton crop. And in fact, at one time, Alabama was one of the 10 richest states in the country. And the United States was the world's leading cotton producer. Then the war came along. The Yankees started blockading the ports. Because of that, it drove the price of cotton from 13 cents a pound up to over $1 a pound. You could get rich if you could get your cotton out. The problem was, that you were hard pressed to do that. Eventually, it got to the point where Southern governors were telling farmers to quit growing cotton because we can't eat cotton. That was the start of the demise of cotton in Alabama. After that, you had Reconstruction. You had problems getting fertilizer, the weather to contend with, obviously. And then something that's very familiar to y'all down in this area is the boll weevil. What all this meant is it forced farmers to diversify into other row crops, such as corn, soybeans, and obviously very close to home, peanuts. So much so that Alabama doesn't even do a tenth of what number 1 Texas does. Over north of Childersburg in Talladega County, this is a significant part of Alabama history that few people are aware of. This is one of the last remaining remnants of the Alabama Army Ammunition Plant. It was built in 1941 by DuPont, and the purpose was the factory was to make explosive powders, gunpowders, but not exactly, just explosive powders for World War II. At its height, it had around 25,000 people working here. It was cranking out 40 million pounds of ammunition a month. Towards the latter part of the war, it was also involved in the production of heavy water, which was used for the atomic bomb. After the war was over, the plant was eventually shut down in August of 1945. It sat vacant for a while until they decided they were going to see if they could lease out some of the old buildings there for commercial and industrial purposes and all like that. Eventually, it came to be discovered the ground was highly polluted, from all that munitions production, to the point It actually was a EPA Superfund site. Up in Perry County, just north of Marion, it's just a little roadside park. Now, when I was growing up, this was your fast food restaurant. Yeah, when we go on vacation, when we were going from Huntsville, which is where I grew up, all the way down to Gulf Shores, that was 10 or 11 hours in the back seat of a station wagon. What would happen is your mom would pack a lunch, y'all drive 4 or 5 hours, you'd pull over to one of these little roadside parks. They were literally nothing more than a handful of concrete tables and some trash cans, but it was still half an hour not being in the back seat of the station wagon with an annoying little brother. Now there's a McDonald's on every corner. The state doesn't even maintain these anymore. In fact is, I actually was up here this past winter. I was going to go back and look for it again. I was just going to reshoot it since I was close. It's gone. I couldn't find anything. You see that dead tree behind the table. When I finally, I knew I was in the right place because that dead tree was laying on the ground. And it was kind of sad that I'll never get another chance to shoot that. Over in Henry County, not terribly far from y'all, this is Rosa Parks' childhood home. She, I believe, was born in Montgomery, but she grew up here. I was actually at the library in Abbeville back 3 years ago, and I drove right past this, and it was so overgrown you couldn't even hardly see it. I talked to the guy at the library there and asked him what the deal was, and he said, well, the house sits on private land. The owner has no interest in selling it, but apparently also has no money to keep it up. It was in pretty bad shape then. I actually went and saw it again about a year and a half ago, and nothing's really changed. They boarded up the windows, but it's in worse condition than the last time I saw it. Down in Escambia County, I was actually at the library in Atmore, and I had done a program there, and after I was done, a lady with a newspaper asked if I wanted to go see a rolling jail, and it's like, well, duh. So we head out to the edge of town to a salvage yard and get out there. I guess this. All right, well, this is built by the Manley Steel Corporation out of Dalton, Georgia, sometime in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. Now, normally, you know, I ask people if they'd seen the movie Cool Hand Luke. Well, you remember the chain gangs out working out on the county roads. Well, it was a lot of trouble to get these people, you know, get them all up, get them fed, get them loaded up, carry out to a job site, work all day, then turn around and do everything backwards. So somebody came up with this idea of the rolling jail. It's got bunks in it. It has a stove. They cover it with canvas at night. And the convicts would actually camp out on the job site until they were done. Up in Lee County in Opelika, when I did this in a live audience, I used to ask people, what do you think this is? I mean, what's the creepiest thing you could think of? Almost nobody ever got it. So just to save you the trouble, this is a funeral home, Ward's Funeral Home. I have no idea when it was built. All I know is he was in the mortuary business for many, many years. He eventually passed on, and his son, who was also in the mortuary business, he decided he wasn't going to use the place anymore. But he was going to set up his business inside the city limits of Opelika, and Opelika was just really on him to, you know, do something with the property. And rather than fool with them, he just relocated his business on the outskirts of town, so the city didn't have any more influence over him. So the property continued to decline to the point where eventually it was actually knocked down probably about, 8-10 months ago, so it doesn't even exist anymore. Down in Baldwin County, you know, maybe a mile and a half east of Fort Morgan, this is the keel of the merchant schooner Rachel. She was uncovered by a tropical storm probably like 8-10 years ago, something like that. And people came up with all these crazy theories about, you know, the origin of the boat, you know, a commerce raider or something crazy like that. That boat's not near that old. She was a merchant schooner. She was built probably around the turn of the 20th century, and a merchant schooner. She was the seagoing equivalent of a tractor trailer. She ran lumber back and forth between Alabama and Cuba. Sometime in 1923, she got caught in a tropical storm, and the storm actually beached the entire vessel up on the shore here. Now, the boat survived. It was okay. The boat's owner got every tugboat he could find to try and get it back in the water. He was unsuccessful, and he finally gave up, stripped the boat of everything that was usable, and turned around and walked away from it. Well, somebody else came along and burned it to the ground, and which is all presumably to salvage the iron nails out of it. That's the story I heard anyway. Time, the weather, and tourists have not been kind to the Rachel, and I figure eventually, 3 or 4 years from now, there'll be almost nothing left to see. I'm sure y'all all recognize this. This is the old Channel 4 studios out on Webb Road in Webb, Alabama. Obviously, y'all know Channel 4 is still on the air, but they abandoned those studios in this building many, many years ago, and it truly looks like a ghost town out here. And it's a really, really cool old TV sign. That sign dates back to the 50s easily. It used to be TV stations all located on the outside of town, and they all had these huge signs, presumably to catch people's attention. Up in Ozark, y'all know where that is. This is the old, actually it's not the old, yeah, actually it is the old depot for the Alabama Coastline Railroad in Ozark. This was built in 1911. The Atlantic Coastline Railroad, my bad. The Alabama Midland wound up merging into other railroads, and they formed the Atlantic Coastline Railroad. The first tracks were actually laid through Dale County back in 1889. The original depot that used to sit here was built, actually, I'm not sure when it was built, but it burned in 1910, which is why they built this one. Passenger service ceased here in 1960, and sadly, even though there were efforts to try and save the depot, nothing ever came of it, and it was eventually torn down in January of 2018. Over in Waldo, Alabama, y'all know where Waldo is. Everybody does. Okay, where's Waldo? It's actually up in Talladega County. This is the old Waldo Covered Bridge. It was built in 1858. It's said that Straits Raiders, who were a bunch of Yankees going through trashing and burning everything they could find in Alabama, actually used this bridge to get from one point to the next. After the war was over, it just went back to regular service as a covered bridge it's right by a state highway. I'm not convinced it actually was a state highway at the time. I don't think they actually had state highways back then. Eventually, the state realized that the bridge was unsafe, and they condemned it sometime in the 1960s. People talk about preserving it, but keep it from getting any worse and all like that. Make it like some sort of a site or something like that. So far, all it seems to amount to is people talk about it and a lot of good intentions, but so far nothing's come of that. Up in northwestern Madison County, this is the Urquhart House. This is the very first room of the third oldest structure in the entire state of Alabama, and the oldest abandoned structure. Alan Urquhart. I know it's spelled Urquhart. It's pronounced Urquhart, it's a Scottish name. He moved down to North Alabama in 1813, and he built this house soon after he got here. Built this cabin. Well, it's a one-room cabin. He actually wound up building onto it and adding more of them. But like I said, it's the third oldest structure in Alabama and the oldest abandoned structure. You're actually looking at pretty much the oldest existing structure in Alabama right here. Back when I was a teenager, me and my friends, we used to hang out on this guy's farm up in northwestern Madison County and had this cool old house there. And that's where we hung out. And, as it turns out, this is the very same house. And 45 years later, I'm actually up here and I actually documented this. It's like this wound up becoming, the outside of it actually wound up being the cover of my last book. It was like I was destined to do Forgotten Alabama. And finally, down in Sumter County is Kotopa Presbyterian Church. There are two things I absolutely love to shoot. Old buildings, which is pretty obvious, and the Milky Way. You can't see the Milky Way in the dead of winter because of where we are in our orbit around the sun. You can see it great in the summer, but then everything's all grown up. So what I did was, this is April 2018, I got up and left my house at 2 o'clock in the morning. I drove 2 hours down to Sumter County to get down here. So we put me down there at 4 a.m. I sat up, oh, by the way, it was soaking wet and about 45 degrees. I was cold, wet, and miserable. But, I was bound and determined. I've been thinking about this shot for months, and I planned it out. I did everything, and it was just like I was going to make this happen. I was there about an hour, got my shots and run and went home. And then, when I finally got home, it's about 7 o'clock in the morning. I was so tired, I just went to bed. When I finally got up to look at the photographs, it was like, oh, cool, there's a meteor. I didn't even realize I had that. It's just, you take that one picture in your lifetime, you think, can I ever top this? And it's like, you know what, I don't know that I'll ever do anything better than this. So that was really a cool moment. I'm going to leave you also some passing thoughts here. When you go home, well, you're obviously home because you're watching this online or wherever you're watching it. The next time you're out and about and you're driving around, look around the things you see every single day. Your bank, your neighborhood, where you go to church, where your kids go to school. 100 years from now, almost none of this will exist. So take pictures of everything, because you never know when you're the very last person to have ever taken a photograph of it. You go back and look at an old black and white photograph of, something from 50 years ago, and you look at it, and that's just like so cool to see that 1 microsecond captured in time. And you got to realize 50 years ago when that photograph was taken, it was probably a pretty mundane subject. Just FYI, I have a Facebook group. It's facebook.com groups Forgotten Alabama. You asked to join if you'd like to. Make sure you answer the questions, because I can't let you in if you don't answer the question. And we'll be more than happy to add you. I also have an Instagram account if y'all do that kind of thing. I go by the handle of Forgotten Alabama 1819. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I hope y'all have a better understanding of what it is exactly I do. I do love what I do. I'm always looking forward to winter. I only shoot in the winter, and I hate winter. Trust me, I hate being cold. But I do love shooting, and the best time to shoot is obviously in the dead of winter when there's no leaves and no kudzu and things like that. If you're interested in copies of my book, all you have to do is go to ForgottenAlabama.com, and that's my first book right there. This is my second book, the much anticipated sequel for more Forgotten Alabama, and obviously my pride and joy, 200 years of Forgotten Alabama. This actually came out last year. It was in celebration of the bicentennial. All you have to do is go to ForgottenAlabama.com. I have specials on combinations of whichever books you want, and I'd love to hear from you. Obviously, you can join the Facebook group, and you can follow me on Instagram if you're curious. I'm Forgotten Alabama 1819. I appreciate y'all joining me. It's been fun, and I look forward to many more years of doing this. Y'all stay safe, and have a great day.